What's good, everyone? Welcome back to the show Recap with Mo, where we're getting ready to get into another episode breakdown of BounceTV's own Johnson series. But before we get into this thing, make sure to like and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss shit that's going down right here. Alright, so the episode we're getting ready to recap is episode number 10 of season 3, titled Social Distance. Now, the synopsis for this episode states that Greg signs up with Big Brother, Big Sister to mentor a young teen. Jarvis and Freddie Sr. bond over a street card game. The fellas decide that Omar needs an intervention. Now that we got that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into this thing. All right, so we start this episode off with Omar pulling up to Caleb's school, picking him up for school. Or so we thought he was getting ready to pick him up, because Caleb jumps in the car. He's super excited about being able to get back on the field and play a little more football. I think they made it to the playoffs or whatnot. And unfortunately, Omar has to be the bearer of bad news because, in the previous episode, Omar had a conversation with his soon-to-be ex-wife, so we believe, and, she pretty much stated that, she didn't want Caleb playing football, and she really wanted him to make an executive decision and pretty much convey that information to Caleb, like be a man about it, all right? So anyhow, Omar delivers that information. Of course, Caleb is not happy. Caleb goes off a little bit where he's, talking, reckless right now, because he actually tells Omar that he hated him. Of course, Omar's like, well, you need to watch your mouth. And I do agree that there needs to be a level of respect. But Omar needs to understand as well that Caleb did everything that he was told to do, that he was asked to do by Omar, his father. Now, the issue with all of this is that Omar promised Caleb that as long as you kept your grades up and went to school, did what you were supposed to do, that I would make sure that you would be able to play football. Well, at this point in time, he's going back on his word. And at the end of the day, Caleb still has to do what his father has asked him to do, regardless if he's pissed off or not. It is what it is. And, when I was growing up, if I would have said what Caleb just said to Omar, it'd have been a whole different situation. So, they got it good today. So anyhow, going on from there, Caleb gets up out of the car. Oh, before he gets up out of the ride, he tells Omar that he overheard his ex-wife, or soon-to-be ex-wife, Naomi, talking to someone on the telephone, and she says that she hoped that Caleb never grew up to be like Omar. And I'm like, dang. Like, that is crazy. Like, I wish that Caleb never said that. I also wish that Caleb never heard that. One of the things that people have to understand is that you can have a problem, you can have an issue with your significant other, but it's not good for the kids to hear all of that mess going on around them, because it ultimately affects them. And I know while we're going through it, we never think about that. But, Omar, once Caleb decides to leave the vehicle, he looks defeated. Like, what can I do? He's trying to tell his son not to leave the vehicle. His son goes ahead and leaves anyway, because he's like, I finally understand what she's saying. And I'm like, damn, like, that's all Omar has. Like, Naomi doesn't seem like she wants to get back with him. And we'll have another side conversation about that. But then now his own son, is leaving him as well. So I don't know where this is going to lead, Omar. But anyhow, going on from there, we see Greg, who is now seeking to become a big brother at Big Brothers Big Sisters, right, in Atlanta. So the guy is just interviewing him. He's asking him questions. Greg is super excited. He feels like he has something to bring to the table. And the guy asked, are you married? He was like, no. Do you have any kids? He was like, no. And he was like, well, what's your occupation? And Greg goes in to tell him, hey, I got all of this going on. I'm trying to go to culinary school. And he was like, look, let me just be honest with you. Like, I'm a late bloomer, but I do feel like I have something to bring to the table. And, I've made a lot of mistakes, so I'm here so I can fix a lot of those things so someone else down the line don't fall into the same traps that I fell into. So I was like, okay, I can feel him on that. Oh boy's like, look, we're not looking for you to be perfect. We just want you to be present. And I think that's a cool thing for Greg to actually, seek out to do, because previously, he was into this whole mindset about becoming a father. And I guess we'll figure that out a little bit later. But ultimately, he feels like he can give somebody something or nurture somebody to be better. And maybe in helping or assisting another young man, maybe it would help him as well become a better man and eventually a better father, to, his firstborn child. But since we're already talking about fathers and sons, let's go ahead and talk about Jarvis. So Jarvis is taking his dad out on the town, Freddie Sr., and, they're enjoying one another's company. And Freddie Sr. is like, hey, what you got going on tonight? Jarvis is like, look, I'm hanging out with the fellas tonight. And Freddie is like, oh, those Johnson boys. He was like, yeah, and he said, it's just funny how, all of y'all's name was Johnson. And he was like, well, actually, I'm a Nelson now. But he was like, well, to be honest with you, Jarvis, your great-grandfather actually was a Johnson. And he was like, hold on, wait, how did that happen, right? And he was like, well, your great-grandmother and your great-grandfather had a child out of wedlock. And, she was upset at his great-grandfather or something like that. So she named, she named his folks Nelson, the child Nelson, after her in spite of him. So that's how all of that came to be. But I'm just thinking right now, what's going through Jarvis's mind right now? Because could he be related to one of his friends? Like, I was like, okay, the wheels are spinning here. But anyhow, Jarvis goes ahead and drops his father off, and they're just conversating, getting to know one another. And Jarvis accidentally calls this man, Freddie Sr., his pops. And he doesn't even recognize that he's gotten comfortable enough to call this man his pops, right? So Freddie Sr. is looking at him through the car window like, okay, we moving on up. And Jarvis is looking back at him like, what's good? Like, why are you looking at me like that? And Freddie Sr. is like, hey, bro, you just called me pops. And he was like, no, I didn't. He was like, yes, you did. And long story short, I can see where this is going. They're building a bond. They're building a relationship, which I'm glad that, he's actually able to do even after all of this time, right? So anyhow, going on from there, we head over to the laundromat, right? And we see Brother Keith and his fine chocolate sister, Jackie. Now, I ain't gonna lie, Jackie, man, that gap is, man, listen, listen. Thin in between. Look, I don't care when I just see that skin, man. It just softens me up a little bit, and them dreads, like that natural look, man. There's something about it. So Jackie is fine, man. Like I said, I don't care, man. So anyhow, so they go to the laundromat. Keith done found him a good one, because now she's going to show this man how to wash clothes. Like, for the longest time, Keith has been taking his clothes over to his mother's house and allowing her to do his laundry. But Jack is like, look, I'm going to teach you how to wash your own damn clothes, right? So he goes over to the machine. He was like, well, I'm gonna just start here. She was like, no, you're not gonna start here unless you're trying to dry your shit. And so she was like, look, let me show you how to separate the colors from the white. And she got the wine, she got the red cup, she got some snacks. I was like, shit. I was like, all right. So anyhow, Keith is excited about learning how to do his he's excited about it, and I'm excited for him because I think he's found someone that has his back, and he can see her for who she is, and she can see him for who he is and support him. And ladies, that's what we need as men, from our ladies, from our women, from our wives, from our spouses, whatever you want to call yourself. That's what we need as men. Not to, try to control us and not us controlling you, but supporting one another, knowing one another, uphold me when something is trying to attack me, and I'm going to do the very same thing. I'm going to stand in front of you when something is trying to attack you. That's exactly what we need at this point, and Keith has found him a good one, y'all. Don't mess it up. That's all I'm saying. So anyhow, next we see Greg and Jarvis. They back over at the club. Jarvis tells Greg that, the whole situation that went down about his great-grandfather. So he was like, well, I'm actually back in the game because I'm actually a Johnson, right? So anyhow, he and Greg get into this whole conversation about Freddie Sr., about the whole gasoline where he was getting ready to burn up the house or whatnot. And he was like, look, man, he wasn't going to really do anything. I got there right in the nick of time. He had more alcohol on his breath than he did on the lawn. So anyhow, Greg goes on to ask him about, Miss Anita and Mr. Wardell, who were his quote-unquote parents forever until now. And Jarvis is like, look, I'm still dealing with it. I'm still trying to figure that whole thing out. And I know ultimately it is killing him right now because that's all that he's known. I think eventually he's going to bridge that gap as well. I think he's going to mend it. And he's still probably going to have a relationship with them as well. Right now, it's just too fresh for him to really deal with it. But I think eventually he will go back over. So while they are drinking, and Greg conveys to him that he got his job back, and Jarvis is like, well, it's cool, you're a dishwasher. And he was like, no, actually, I'm not a dishwasher. I actually got hired to, be on the, on the food preparation area or whatnot. So Greg is like, not Greg, but Jarvis is like, cool, all right, well, let's go ahead and drink up some more. So anyhow, he was like, we're going to put this on your tab. So anyhow, the bartender comes over. She tells them, don't worry about it. Just tip me. Don't worry about, the drink or whatnot. And he was like, cool. By the way, where's your homeboy, Omar? And it was like, well, we called him. He hasn't shown up or anything or returned our phone calls. And she was like, well, it's better that he's probably not here. They was like, what are you talking about? So she conveys to them about the situation that went down in his uncle's lounge, where he busted somebody upside the head with a bottle, and and he actually lost his job. And they was like, oh, for real? And she was like, hold on, I thought y'all were close, like you didn't know that? He was like, oh yeah, he ain't told y'all shit. And now, he's disappeared because his feelings are hurt right now, not because of the $50,000 situation at the bank, but he's truly going through a whole lot of stuff right now, and he just needs something to hold on to. And unfortunately, it's just not falling the way that it needs to crumble for him at this moment. But anyhow, getting away from this bad news, we head over to the laundromat where we see both Keith and Jackie. They just chilling, loving each other's company or whatnot. And, Keith brings up, her father, like he didn't waste no time, doing what he needed to do to get at Keith, right? So Jackie is laying down and she was like, look, why don't you just go and change it? So he was like, well, I'm not in politics or anything like that. And she was like, well, I actually noticed you at that meeting the other day, and you look like you would be a great individual in that role or whatnot. So, this is exactly what I'm talking about, ladies. Like, she saw something in her man that, he was doing at this meeting, and she was like, okay, this brother can speak up. He's holding his own against my father. Also, he cares about the community, the people that live within the community. So maybe this is a route that he could possibly get into. And then she was like, look, if you don't like it, change it. And he was like, okay, what do I need to do? She tells him that her father's seat is up for grabs or her father is up for re-election within a year. And it was like, okay, so am I supposed to wait for a year for something to change? She says, absolutely not. So anyhow, man, let's go ahead and get past that because that ain't what I want to get to. So real quick, they just sitting here talking, man. And she starts talking about, well, my father, he's definitely not going to walk me down the aisle, whenever we do. Well, you know what I'm saying. And then he looks down and then he looks up and then he was like, yeah, well, let's go ahead and do it. Like this. Let's take your father out of this whole equation and let's just go elope. Let's go somewhere exotic, sexy, and just do it. And Jack is like, hold on, wait a minute. Like, what are you talking about right now? And he was like, look, let's just do it. She gets up out of her seat. Well, she sits down. She sits up because she was laying down on her back on his lap. And he gets up, actually, gets down on one knee and proposes to Jackie. And I was like, hell yeah, bro. That's how you supposed to do it. Now, I know we live in a day now, women are saying you don't have to do that. As a matter of fact, I'm going to propose to you. I mean, that's all good if that's what you like. But for me, as a man, I'm just traditional like that. I'm going to get down on one knee. I'm going to propose to the woman that I love, which I did. And, it is what it is. And I thought this was a beautiful thing. This brother taking this woman that he feels is riding out for him and he's riding there for her. It's just a beautiful thing, y'all. That tear was up in my eye, man. So anyhow, she was like, okay, well, where's the ring? Right? And it's like, yeah, I got it right here. He actually doesn't have it on him. So he goes to the dryer, which he has his other clothes in. He believes it's inside of the dryer. So while he's searching for the ring, he receives a phone call from one of the brothers, right? So I'm assuming it's not Omar. So I'm assuming it's either Greg or Jarvis. So anyhow, the look or the expression on his face is like, okay, this is for real serious. Like, like what's going on with Omar? So anyhow, we head over to Omar's crib where we see the fellas showing up. They're knocking on the doors, they're knocking on the windows, and it's like, Omar, come to the door. Omar doesn't come immediately. So what's his name? Greg is getting ready to kick in the front door like he's FBI or some shit. And Jarvis is like, hold on, man, I got a spare key. They was like, hold on, you got a spare key to old boy's house? He was like, yeah. Keith is like, should I be jealous at this point? And he was like, no, we good. So when they're getting ready to open the door, Omar actually comes to the door. And he's like, what's going on? Like, why y'all beating on my door like the police or whatnot? So they like, look, man, we've been trying to call you. You ain't picking up your phone. You're not calling anybody back. We haven't heard from you in a couple of days. So we're just trying to see if everything is good. He was like, hey, man, y'all just need to go and leave. And then they even conveyed to him about what they heard about the bar fight with the bottle and all of that stuff. And he was like, look, man, you, Greg, were the one that actually told me to do it. Greg was like, no, man, I didn't tell you. And then he thought about it for a moment. He was like, yeah, I did tell you to do that. So now they looking at Greg for encouraging Omar to do some shit to possibly get himself back into trouble. And they was like, look, man, you smarter than this. Like, you should have thought about that before you did that. You lost your job. And now we're not trying to lose you to the streets. Like, we're not trying to see you go back to jail or whatnot. So anyhow, Omar is still trying to get rid of them off his porch. And they was like, hell to the no, we not going no daggone well, bro. We right here with you. And we're not leaving. We're going to figure out what we need to do. So they get inside the crib and Omar conveys to him that his life is out of control. His son ain't even talking to him. This whole situation with Naomi, they was like, yeah, we know about Naomi. He was like, it's so much more that I'm going through. And, Greg is like, man, look, and he didn't make the situation any better because Greg is like, man, you should have known when you went in there what the consequences were going to be when you went upside Stefan's head with that bottle. And he was like, truth be told, Greg, I wasn't even thinking about it. He was like, what I was thinking about is that Stefan had access to my family, and my son ain't talking to me. And he said maybe it could have been the fact that I was profiled at the bank earlier that day. I just don't know. So anyhow, long story short, Jarvis is like, look, man, It could be the situation where you confronted the pastor at the church. Omar doesn't want to talk about that, and he was like, look, I'm actually past that. And Jarvis was like, are you really? And then he thinks about it, and he sinks in his chair. And Jarvis says, look, you need counseling. Greg is anti-counseling, you can tell already. But, you know, in order to support Omar, Jarvis is like, look, I will go with you. Shit, I need therapy myself because all of the stuff that I'm going through right now. Keith also suggests that he would go as well. But by the way, are there going to be some snacks? And Greg is, you know, as we stated before, he's anti-therapy at this moment. So he says, look, I'll drop y'all off, but I'm not actually going in to actually sit down with a therapist and talk over my thoughts. All right. So you see 4 different men here at all different levels, and they're all going through their shit all at the same time, and they're learning to cope with it and deal with it and deal with their mental health. Man, listen, this show right here is a great show. I just don't understand why it's not getting the shine that it needs. But I'm definitely going to keep rocking with it as long as it's on, because I talk about sisters, I talk all about these other shows. So I'm definitely going to support my brothers when they get on the tube, man. So anyhow, Keith goes on to tell them that he actually proposed to Jackie. Nothing has been set in stone. They talk about who's going to be the best man. And they pass the notion around, well, he could be the best man, or he could be the best man, or he could be the best man. Long story short, they all got him. They're all supporting him, and they all love him. So at the end of the day, that's what it's about, having a community within your community, man, and building a bond. And that's something that we see with these 4 brothers here, the Johnson brothers, all right? So with that being said, man, that's pretty much the end of my recap. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this thing. I've enjoyed talking about it. I'm going to go back and look at something else that I do want to talk about, and I'll actually place that in another video. But with all of that being said, please like and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss shit that's going down right here. Also, if you think that someone else would enjoy this content, please share this with them as well. Until next time, I'll talk to y'all soon. Peace.